welcome to 2020 Design Trends with UXPin. Our today's guest is Ramses, and I'm not going to, even try to pronounce your surname.
It's fine.
I wouldn't, like to offend you or anything. So please, Ramses, just tell us a bit about yourself, how to pronounce your name, for example, your experience, what is your field of design, and just in a couple of sentences.
Hi, my name is Ramses. My surname is pronounced Cabello, and I work at GAN Integrity in Copenhagen. My role in the company is UI engineer, but I work mostly throughout the whole process of design. My main focus is like prototyping ideas and concepts so that we can interact with them and get to validate with the customers. So I've been working in design industry for around 7 or 8 years at this point. So yeah.
Wow, that's cool. Well, I mean, I probably barely ever heard like your role, UI engineer. Can you tell us a little bit about it? Like because I know UI designer or product designer and engineering. Like it's like usually it's separate, right? So
yeah, I feel most of the time like this whole title things, it's very difficult. For some companies, the same title might mean something, and for other companies, it means something else. I feel like UI engineer is mostly related to working closely with the development team, just to make sure that the designs and the prototypes you create get implemented as close to the design as possible. But it's kind of interesting you talk about this topic because I feel like for a long time we've been struggling to what is the real what is my role and what is the what is my title. So yeah, it's very difficult in the design culture to just figure this is my title.
Yeah, well, I think it changes a lot, and there are like we're supposed to speak about the 2020 trends right now.
Yeah.
So I think there are voices that some of the jobs are going to disappear or evolve into something else. And while we are speaking about your title, which is like really rare, could you like maybe tell me what is your view of the voice that UX designer job is going to be disappearing, and there are whole new jobs going to be emerging in 2020?
Yeah, I think for a long time, designers, we have been taking too many hats. So, I take this role, but in the end, I do kind of everything throughout the process. So I feel as more specific roles will be appearing, I also have the sense that there will be something more of like a UX culture curator in companies, somebody that is responsible for all those different people. So there's something about like curation and I don't like the word management or manager, but I feel like designers have this responsibility of kind of like make sure that everybody in an organization know that UX is everyone's responsibility. So it's this sort of like a feeling of curating the UX community within the organization. So I see maybe the need for more roles like that. So
okay, so it's not going to be just like speaking about user or talking about user experience, but actually having the whole process from like making it the most smooth you can get, like throughout the whole organization, and making sure the collaboration on each side.
I think there is a big need for somebody curating and helping everyone in the organization understand that the UX designer can shape the design of the experience as an interactive point of view or service point of view, but at the end of the day, how sales sell the product, or how every different part of the company speaks about the product, and what is the interaction between like customers and the organization. That's also UX, so there must be somebody curating this sort of experiences as well. So I don't know if I just call it something like a design culture curator or something related to that kind of concept.
Yeah, well, there is this whole new field of business, which is called like customer experience. Well, it's not new, obviously, but now people, like for example, in business or marketing roles, are more expected to know a lot about customer experience, because I think we are like switching the focus from brand and product to real people. And the more real the brand is, the more like the better the relationship with the customer or the user is, right? So I think that the whole trend, and I strongly believe that it's in the design as well, is the real life, like all real life. And it's, for example, like in photograph, right? Like real life beauty, it's not no longer like one type of model, right?
Yeah.
But people are not photoshopping the pictures as much. Do you think that this trend is like really holistic, like from like, you know, like from the business side to the customer side to the like real life people?
Yeah, I love photography, and I love street photography. And for me, street photography is about capturing kind of like all these daily interactions in a very kind of lighthearted way. I think there is also about that also in this trend that you mentioned of real life, and how can we apply that to product, for example, or UX is kind of reduce intermediaries, you know, between the product and the real people that's going to use it. Try to, for example, in the field I work, I would say that the most important thing is that people get to the data as soon as possible. So try to cut all these things in between. How can we reduce them? How can we make the product more real and just avoid putting filters or I think it's about kind of reducing complexity. And, you know, Photoshop at the end of the day, it's like selling an idea that is not real. It's like retouching reality to fit a specific mindset, you know. But there are several mindsets. There are too many. It must be diverse, you know. So I feel like if you put it out there real, if you don't sugarcoat it, if you don't put filters on it, then it's just people can relate easily. It doesn't look like out of their reach. So
yeah, exactly. And well, we speaking of like, you know, being more diverse, I think especially UI designing is, you know, like shifting towards being more open to all kinds of people. It's not like, okay, so this is like the typical user and we're like only focusing on him, right? And I think well, from what I gather, accessibility is a huge trend, and I think it's not supposed to be a trend but a must in our times, and I'm really hoping that in 2020 it will be. What do you think?
For a very long time, I've had this idea, like, you know how trends like mobile first or flat design, all these things comes and go, but there have never been something like accessibility first. You know, that there has never been this whole like idea of putting accessibility on the first row of the story, right? So I feel this year, and not only this year, but forever and ever, we should just have accessibility on top of everything. And I also get the feeling like when we think about accessibility, we tend to think like a kind of like a so out of our everyday, right? So we don't tend to relate very much to it as a designer. But I think industries that have never thought that accessibility will be relevant, they're now suffering the pains of not having thought about that before. Like, for example, I also am very close to like the video game industry. And many video games are struggling because they have not thought that people that, for example, have problems with eyesight, they will be playing games where the subtitles or the text or the UI, it's very complex. Last year, for example, I had to drop so many games because I could not play due to the text being very small. And it's just like, I hope that during this year, many industries like wake up and see that accessibility will not only it's not just a tick, we have to be accessible, but it's also more about opening your product and your whatever you're building to as many people as possible. And though, sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
No, sorry.
Okay, like I was going to say that speaking from design tool point of view, I think technology is like making it so much more easy for designers to really be like we discussed, like to design real life experience, or like be accessible, etc. Right? Like, do you have like experience of how you would you say like build this real life experience in your work?
Yeah. For example, again, we use UXPin, and for me, it's like the tool that I use constantly because it allows me to check accessibility on the go. I think during the last year there was implementation of new features to check accessibility, like the text, the size of the text, and the color contrast and stuff like that. And it also allows us to cut a little bit this thing of real life, real life product, because of all the small features that allows us to build very high fidelity prototypes. Whatever we display to the customers or to colleagues is always as close to reality as possible. I see people in my company clicking around, and by mistake they forget, like, oh, this is not the real thing. Sometimes you need to remind them, oh, okay, this is just a prototype. So especially about accessibility, I would like to see tools follow a little bit this example of UXPin and implementing in context accessibility tools. Very often for developers, you see like plugins or console things where you can check like audit your accessibility of the site, but very rarely we see design tools taking also this approach.
Well, yeah, I think we have like a few features to come in 2020, so fingers crossed is going to be like
looking forward, yeah,
the whole design community. So while we're speaking about your point of view and your experience, what would be like your first favorite emerging trend for 2020?
Maybe this is a little bit like controversial, but I think during this year we need to take this kind of like a minimalism approach of challenging, okay, what do we actually need? And during this year, we most likely gonna try to fix a lot of the mess we've created in the last decade. Maybe a lot of we've been maybe making too many apps, we've been making too many products, and we've been making too many things or creating too complex designs. And I think this year, I think I would really like to see more designers and more product people taking this approach of challenging. Do we actually need that thing? Having a little bit, I would love intentional design to be a trend. So why are we designing this? And so
yeah, that is like a really good trend that I would like to see as well. Yeah, because I think the design is not a good design unless it's usable, right? But the more we dive into business and like money is taking part in it, I think the more we like kind of drift off of the how are they supposed to use it, and is it really necessary, right?
In my field, which is compliance business, compliance solution, it's such a strict, because it's regulated by laws, and there is all this it's a kind of strict. But enterprise software, it's a very interesting take on design, because until now it has been enough to have like a long list of features. We pick that enterprise software or that enterprise software because it can do more or it can do less. But since the people using that software at the end of the day is so biased, because the consumer products are getting better, they have good design, they are being exposed to really, really good applications or to really good websites. So I don't feel like enterprise software enough with a good list of features. That is not enough. So enterprise software, I see it kind of like embracing design more into their everyday. So even customers will pick one product or the other, even if some of the features are not available yet, but the design and the experience is nicer, I might pick that one. So for enterprise software, it's no longer like, okay, I can do all of that. Yeah, maybe I can do a little bit less, but I can do it and perform it better and easier. So yeah, I think that there is something also about that during this year in enterprise software. You can see it also coming from a long time with Atlassian or all those. So they are embracing design a little bit more.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed it's going to happen. What you are saying, and just, you know, like, I agree completely. So I think I have like really good insight from you, very amazing thoughts on 2020 trends, and thank you very much, Ramses, for joining me in this interview. I hope we can engage in the discussion with our community.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so bye.
Bye.